When I tell you this story, I want you to know one thing up front. Pay attention to your surroundings, even when you feel safe. Trust me, I learned this lesson the hard way. Oh, and before we get into it, if you enjoy these stories, hit that like button and subscribe. It really helps the channel grow. And I promise I have so many more stories to share with you. All right, let's get into it. So, this happened a few months ago. I had just moved back to my small hometown after a rough breakup. I was living with my mom while I tried to get back on my feet. You know how it is starting over sucks, especially in a place where there's not much going on. One night, I was working a late shift at the diner where I picked up a job. It was one of those quiet shifts where the hours drag by and your thoughts keep you company. By the time I clocked out, it was around 3:30 am. I grabbed my usual post-shift meal, a coffee and a turkey wrap from the only drive-thru and started heading home. It was chilly that night, the kind of cold where your breath fogs up the windshield if the defrost isn't blasting. I was driving through town when I noticed my gas light had come on. Now, normally I just wait until the morning, but something told me to stop at the station on the way home. You ever get that nagging feeling like, I should just get this over with now? Yeah, that. The gas station I pulled into was practically deserted, which wasn't unusual for that time of night. I parked near the pumps, and as I was filling up, a car pulled into the lot. A dark SUV, the kind where you can't really see who's inside because the windows are tinted. I remember glancing at it and feeling off, but I brushed it aside. Maybe I was just tired. I finished filling up and went inside to grab a bottle of water. When I came back out, the SUV had parked in the farthest corner of the lot, and I noticed a man standing near it, smoking a cigarette. He wasn't near any pumps, and he wasn't heading inside. He was just standing there, watching. At least, it felt like he was watching me. I got back in my car quickly, locked the doors, and left. But the whole drive home, I couldn't shake this weird feeling like someone was behind me. I kept checking my rearview mirror, but the road was completely empty. No headlights, no other cars. Just the dark, winding streets leading back to my mom's house. When I got home, I parked in the driveway, locked the car, and headed inside. I remember thinking how quiet the house was. My mom was asleep, and the only sound was the hum of the fridge in the kitchen. I set my stuff down and started eating my wrap at the table. That's when I heard it, the faintest sound of footsteps. I froze mid-bite and strained my ears to listen. At first, I thought maybe it was my mom coming downstairs for water, but then I realized the footsteps weren't inside the house. They were outside on the gravel driveway. Slowly, I turned off the kitchen light and peeked through the blinds. There he was, the man from the gas station, standing near my car. I can't even describe the wave of fear that hit me in that moment. My mind was racing. Was he looking for something? Did he follow me here? I didn't want to confront him, but I also didn't want to just stand there and do nothing. So I did the first thing that came to mind. I grabbed my phone and called my mom. I know, not the most heroic move, but I didn't want to scream and risk him hearing me. My mom answered gradually, and I whispered, "There's someone outside." To her credit, she didn't hesitate. She told me to stay put and called 911 while I stayed hidden in the kitchen. Within minutes, I saw the red and blue lights of a police car pulling up to our house. The man bolted as soon as he saw them, running into the woods across the street. The cops searched the area but didn't find him. Here's the creepiest part. When the police checked around my car, they found scratch marks on the driver's side window, like he'd been trying to get in. They said it looked like he'd been using a tool of some kind. Have you ever had a moment where you felt something wasn't right and it turned out you were spot on? Let me know in the comments below. And hey, if you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit like and subscribe for more. I'll see you in the next video. Stay safe out there.
I've always been a bit of a night owl, and there's something calming about driving late at night when the roads are empty. I live in Pennsylvania, but my best friend lives in Ohio. We've been close since college, and I visit him at least a couple of times a year. It's about a 5-hour drive, and I prefer to leave around midnight to avoid any traffic and make it in time for an early breakfast with him. So one Friday night, I packed up my car, grabbed the coffee, and hit the road. The first couple of hours were smooth. The highway was dark and quiet, just the occasional headlights from passing cars breaking the silence. I had my music on low, sipping my coffee, and thinking about how great it would be to spend the weekend catching up with my friend. Around 2:30 am I noticed my gas gauge was dipping lower than I expected. I decided to pull off at the next exit with a gas station. I spotted one with a big neon sign that said open 24/7. Perfect. I pulled in, and the place was deserted. Not another car in sight. The gas station itself looked a little run down, but I wasn't too worried. I parked at the pump and got out to swipe my card. But as I was fumbling with the nozzle, I heard it, a faint shuffle, like footsteps behind me. I whipped around, but no one was there. The sound was probably just my imagination, I thought, or maybe the wind. I went back to filling up the tank. That's when I saw movement out of the corner of my eye. There, at the edge of the gas station parking lot, was a man. He was just standing there, watching me. He was far enough away that I couldn't make out his face, but something about the way he stood completely still made my skin crawl. I tried to ignore him, focusing on the pump as it clicked closer to full. But then he started walking toward me. "Hey," he called out, his voice echoing in the quiet. "Can you help me out?" I froze for a moment, unsure of what to do. "What's wrong?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "My car broke down," he said, motioning behind him toward the darkness beyond the gas station. "It's just a little up the road. Can you give me a hand?" I didn't see any car, but the uneasy feeling in my stomach was telling me this wasn't right. "Sorry, man," I said. "I can't, I'm in a hurry." He stopped walking and just stood there, staring at me. The gas pump clicked, signaling it was done. I quickly removed the nozzle, got back in my car, and locked the doors. As I pulled out of the parking lot, I glanced in my rearview mirror. The man was gone. I merged back onto the highway, my heart still racing, but I told myself it was nothing. Just some random guy looking for help. Maybe I overreacted. About 10 minutes later, I saw headlights in my rearview mirror. They were getting closer, too close. The car behind me sped up until it was right on my tail. I couldn't see who was driving, but the way they were swerving and flashing their high beams made my stomach drop. I changed lanes, but they followed. I sped up, so did they. My mind was racing. Was this the same guy from the gas station? I decided to take the next exit, hoping to lose them. But as I turned off the highway, they followed me again. At this point, I was panicking. My phone was on the passenger seat, and I grabbed it to call 911. Before I could even dial, the car suddenly swerved into the opposite lane and sped off, disappearing into the night. I didn't stop driving until I reached a well-lit rest stop. I parked near the entrance and sat there for a while, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. I have no idea what that guy's intentions were, but I'm so glad I trusted my gut and didn't help him.
We've all stopped at a gas station late at night, haven't we? Whether it's to fill up, grab a quick snack, or just stretch during a long drive. These pit stops are usually quick and uneventful, but sometimes they can leave you with a story you'll never forget. This is one of those stories. It happened during a road trip I took last summer. I was driving alone, making my way across the Midwest to visit some family. The drive was about 12 hours, and most of it was through desolate highways with barely any towns in sight. I'd been on the road for hours, and it was already past midnight when my low fuel light came on. You know, the feeling mild panic sets in as you start searching for the next gas station. I finally spotted one of those old, rundown gas stations on the side of the highway, the kind with a flickering neon sign and a single row of pumps. There was one other car parked out front, an old beat up pickup truck. I pulled up to the pump and got out, the cool night air hitting me as I stretched my legs. As I started filling up, I glanced toward the truck. Its windows were fogged up, but I could make out a figure sitting in the driver's seat. They weren't moving, just sitting there. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe they were just taking a break like I was. After filling up, I decided to head inside to grab a drink and use the restroom. The interior of the gas station was dimly lit, with shelves sparsely stocked and a faint smell of something stale in the air. At the counter stood a cashier who looked half asleep, barely acknowledging my presence. I found the restroom in the back corner. It was one of those single occupancy bathrooms, the kind where you can lock the door. I stepped inside, locked it, and went about my business. As I was washing my hands, I heard the faint sound of footsteps outside the door. At first, I thought nothing of it. Someone else probably needed to use the bathroom. But then I noticed something odd. The footsteps didn't stop or walk away. Instead, they lingered, pacing back and forth right outside the door. My heart started to race. I stayed completely silent, straining to listen. Suddenly, there was a knock. Not a polite knock, but a hard, deliberate pounding. "Occupied," I called out, trying to keep my voice steady. No response, just more knocking. I didn't know what to do. My mind raced with worst-case scenarios. Was someone trying to mess with me? Rob me? Finally, I shouted, "I'll be out in a minute," hoping to scare them off. The knocking stopped, and for a brief moment, there was silence. But then I heard the doorknob jiggle. Someone was trying to open the door. At this point, I was full-on panicking. I grabbed my phone, ready to call 911, when suddenly the sound stopped. I waited a few moments, listening intently. Whoever it was seemed to have left. Slowly, I unlocked the door and peeked out. The hallway was empty. I rushed back into the store, trying to act casual, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. When I stepped outside, my stomach dropped. The truck was gone, but now there was another car parked near mine, a black sedan I hadn't seen before. There was a man leaning against it, smoking a cigarette. He watched me as I walked to my car, his eyes following my every move. I got into my car as quickly as I could, locking the doors and starting the engine. As I pulled away, I glanced in my rearview mirror and saw the man get into his car. He started following me. My heart was pounding as I merged back onto the highway. The sedan stayed behind me, matching my speed. I tried to tell myself it was just a coincidence, but after about 10 minutes, I knew it wasn't. I remembered hearing advice about how to handle situations like this. Never go home, never pull over, and if you can, drive to a public place or a police station. Thankfully, there was a small town coming up, so I decided to exit and head toward the police station. As soon as I pulled into the station parking lot, the sedan sped past me and disappeared into the night. I sat there for a moment, catching my breath and trying to process what had just happened. To this day, I don't know who that person was or what they wanted. Maybe they were just trying to scare me, or maybe their intentions were something much worse.